This is my David Cronenberg collection. Now, this director is one of the most brilliant and most bizarre directors I have ever witnessed. His films shock and amaze me even up till this day. He really broke controversial bounds in all of his films. In my David Cronenberg collection, I actually prefer his older films that were either horror, science fiction, or a hybrid of both. And the oldest film I have of his is Shivers, aka They Came From Within. And this low budget Canadian production really pushed the boundaries of horror films at the time. It truly bizarre about parasites that get released inside of an apartment complex, and it turns people into sexual raving maniacs. And there is a lot of really bizarre, funky shit going on in this film, and it's actually one of my all-time favorite films of his, still, even to this day. And the DVD of it is actually really rare. I have the out-of-print image release of it, one of the gems in my collection. If you're a Cronenberg fan and you haven't seen this, try to hunt it down. It's well worth it. And then I have his second film, Rabid, aka Rage. Very similar to Shivers and how it's filmed. Like Shivers, David Cronenberg still runs with his theme of biological issues, your body turning against you. Like, what's more scary than your own body turning against you? And Rabid, again, is lower budget Canadian production. Stars Marilyn Chambers. She's in a motorcycle accident, gets a new experimental skin graft, and it changes her body, so she gets this bizarre penetrating thing that comes out of her armpit in order to suck blood from human beings, and in doing so she causes her victims to go rabid and need blood themselves. It's truly a bizarre movie. I didn't like it as much as Shivers, but I did enjoy this one too. His third film is one of his most bizarre films in his filmography. Fast Company with John Saxon. What the hell is David Cronenberg directing a movie about race car driving? Well, it's one of his hobbies. Motorcycles, fast cars are his hobbies. But in interviews, he said he made this movie only to raise money to make his next film, The Brood. And I can see why. Race car movies, they're very popular, easy money at the box office. So it's not really my type of film. I own it just because it's David Cronenberg, and it's interesting to see this little odd duck in his collection. Then comes his fourth film, The Brood, part of a two-picture deal he signed with the Abaco Embassy Pictures. This is a dark, depressing film made at a very low point in his life. He was recently divorced, custody battle over kids. This film has to do with marital problems and custody over kids. A wife is in a psychiatric ward, and she's actually producing these monstrous children offspring of hers to go out and kill people that have done her wrong. It's, again, typical Cronenberg, really bizarre. And the most memorable sequence has the mother licking off the bloody placenta of one of her mutant children, and it was really shocking at the time. And this is one of my favorites, David Cronenberg. You follow that up with Scanners. This is the very first David Cronenberg film I ever saw, and it got me hooked on him forever. Really intelligent about pregnant mothers were given this drug, and ended up all their children were born with this psychic ability and ability to make people do things at their will and even make heads explode. Yes, that scene where a guy's head explodes in this chilled me to the bone when I was younger. That scene has stuck with me forever. Really smart film, and one of my favorites of David Cronenberg. Surprisingly, a lot of his fans consider this one of his weaker films of his earlier career, but I don't think so. It's actually one of my favorites, and I keep hoping that someday the sequels will come to DVD. He didn't have anything to do with the sequels, but they like Scanners 2 The New Order has some interesting concepts in it, so I'm hoping someday the sequels will come. Then came his first big budget studio film for Universal Pictures, Videodrome. This is one really fucked up movie. James Woods is awesome. He's a seedy cable president of a cable station, and him and some of his mechanics or tech guys, they run across this signal of a game show or some torture show that kills people for real, and it ends up being that it has video waves that get into your brain and make you hallucinate. So there's a lot of mindfuck shit of what's real and what's in just going on in his mind. And this is my favorite David Cronenberg film. Every time I watch it, there's something new I find I just love about this film. Really, just bizarre as hell, and it's hard to believe a big studio greenlit it. So I'm very happy about that. Then he followed up with a more mainstream film, an adaptation of Stephen King's The Dead Zone, and it is tamer compared to his earlier films. It's not as many controversial scenes or bizarre gore sequences. There's still very Cronenbergian moments. One character commits suicide with scissors in the mouth. It's so bizarre that only Cronenberg would be able to put that on film. Christopher Walken, after a car wreck and awaking from a coma, has the ability to touch people and see into the future. And it's a great film, and Christopher Walken surprisingly gives a very moving performance, considering today he mostly just spoofs himself. So definitely a very good film in David Cronenberg's catalog. Then I have The Fly remake. He did not direct The Fly 2, only the remake of The Fly. This was the second film of David Cronenberg I ever saw. Again, one of his more mainstream films. It was made for 20th Century Fox, and I love this film. I love the original Fly, and but this, he changes it and modernizes it just perfectly. And instead of a guy's head and hand getting switched to the Fly, they get genetically combined, and the horrors of his body changing. Just a really grotesque, amazing science fiction horror film hybrid. I would even go as far to say I do like this film just a hair better than the original. You won't hear me say that much, but this is actually a remake I do like better than the original film. After this, David Cronenberg he stopped making horror sci-fi films and mostly concentrated on dramas. And I'm not saying they're bad films. They're fantastic films, but they're just not my type. He directed Dead Ringers, really drama, M. Butterfly, of course, and in there, and Crash, that movie with James Spader and Holly Hunter. They get turned on by car crashes. You get more controversial subject matter, but just not my type. I do own a few films after The Fly of his. I do own a film of his called Existence, and this is a 1996 film where he returned back to science fiction. And this film is a lot like Videodrome, except instead of a cable station, it's about video games. Video games that fuck with your mind. You don't know what's real or what's just in your head. There's amazing plot twists and so many Cronenberg moments that are so bizarre. I love this film. A real return to what he used to do, and that's why I love this film so much. After that, I actually do own a couple of his dramas. A History of Violence, I remember seeing that, and I just love this film. This is one I ended up having to purchase. It was an amazing, violent drama of his that got some Academy Award nominations. And then, of course, he reteamed with Viggo Mortensen with Eastern Promises, another extremely violent, amazing drama. But again, even though those two films are fantastic, I still prefer the sci-fi horror films he directed earlier in his career. So there you go. That is my David Cronenberg collection. Eventually I'll get more of his films. I really need to get the film Naked Lunch. That's a really fucked up film, but definitely one of the best, most intelligent, and bizarre directors in the business.